2 years after exposing corruption at the Public Investment Corporation-owned farms, Daybreak Farms, Mathapelo More is here to find employment. She's had to endure harassment, abuse and intimidation from authorities. More says if she had another chance, she would never expose corruption again. She joins me now just to tell us more about her ordeal. Mathapelo, good afternoon. Welcome to Today on eNCA. Thank you very much for your time. I mean, reading your story in the Sunday Times newspaper yesterday, I was just left with a sinking feeling that says, woe unto our whistleblowers. Am I right?
Yes, you are right, Dan. After we wrote to the PIC, raising concerns about the corruption that was happening at Daybreak, we've been faced with a lot of intimidation. We lost our jobs. Most of us lost our jobs. Some were suspended. I'm facing a criminal case where I received an acting allowance, and they reported the matter for me receiving an acting allowance to the Hawks. They allege that I siphoned 136 million from the company. But what is surprising is that there was never a criminal case against the 136 million. But they choose to go to the Specialized Crimes Court to report the acting allowance. That is just about 300,000.
Okay, just on those two, this allowance thing, is it an issue? Yes. Is it a real criminal matter?
For me, it's not a criminal matter. Remember, I did not appoint myself into this acting position, and I did not pay myself an acting allowance. The acting allowance was approved. It was paid. I was called into the HR office, informed that I will be getting an acting allowance. So it's not as if I went and I paid the acting allowance to myself.
Okay.
And if that was an issue, it could have been an HR matter instead of a criminal matter.
Okay. The next one, 156 million rand. Did you steal that money?
No, I did not steal that money. And you know what's upsetting about the 136 million? That is the contract that Daybreak had with Hestoni, which is one of the distribution companies that were contracted to Daybreak. We have a board member who was part of the previous board and also became a member of the NAGE board. He knew about that deal. He knew that there was a resolution that was approved by 2 of the 3 board members that were at Daybreak at the time. He was supposed to speak up to say, guys, I know about this transaction.
Okay.
And the 136 million was paid to Hestoni. It was not siphoned by myself or my fellow colleagues that were displaced.
So you have benefited nothing from any of this alleged 136 million rand that was paid to Hestoni?
Absolutely nothing.
Okay. Just remind our viewers, what work were you doing for Daybreak Farms at the time when you and some of your colleagues witnessed what you thought was some malfeasance, and you wrote to the shareholder, the Public Investment Corporation? What were you doing there at Daybreak Farms?
I joined Daybreak as the Risk and Internal Audit Manager. In fact, I started the Risk and Internal Audit Division because they did not have that division. And then in September 2019, I was asked to act as a technical executive. And when the board came in, which they came in February 2020, I was already acting as a technical executive. And when these things started, obviously, I was part of the executive, and there are things that I also notified the executive management team that we might have a problem. We might have a problem because what is happening, it's not according to the governance practices.
Yeah. So
hence we wrote the 9-page letter.
You were doing your job as an internal auditor. You're just performing your function to red flag a concern that you were seeing in terms of money flows.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Daybreak itself has been, it has a rough past where we were making losses. And anything that we were watching our expenditure carefully. And when these the board approved a 400% increase for the law firm that was providing company secretarial services and which is linked to PIC officials, it was a red flag. And that very same law firm, which is PJM Lloyd's Pule Malahlela Attorneys, continued to dismiss me via a WhatsApp message. And they were service providers, remember, they are not even part of Daybreak. They sent me a WhatsApp message to dismiss me on 25 May 2021.
One wonders on what strength a service provider would fire an employee of an organization. Very interesting indeed. Now, you've decided to speak up after some time now in terms of what I read in the Sunday Times yesterday. You've been quite silent, so to speak, about it since you blew the whistle. Why speak up now?
Then I haven't been quiet. If you follow the Daybreak story, it has been on Media 24. It's been covered extensively by Sunday Times. But what made me to approach the Sunday Times is because I wanted to tell my story and how my protected disclosure, my whistleblowing, where it put me, because I find myself not being able to pay my debts. My kids were, they had to leave the schools that they were comfortable in. My daughter is in a public school now. My son is at home. He was studying at UCT. And I think I want to touch on this thing. We were bullied. And this part of the bullying, they came to my house one morning with the sheriff. They searched my house, took my kids' laptops, their devices, my devices. All of them were imaged. And the court order said after 90 days, there will be a case that's brought against me. Up to this day, there hasn't been a case brought against me. So my kids are still traumatized up to this date. So that part of the intimidation that I experienced because of my whistleblowing made me approach the Sunday Times. Inability to pay my debts, my electricity connection being disconnected because I'm unable to pay. Those are the things that made me approach Sunday Times to tell my story.
Thanks for talking to me here today on eNCA about this very tough situation you find yourself in when you thought you were duty bound as an internal auditor to red flag some what would look like very dodgy transactions, and you communicate with the shareholder, but then you end up in the position in which you are. You say they came to my home with a sheriff to harass you and intimidate you. Who's they?
So the company approached the court for an ex parte pillar.
So this is Daybreak Farms. Daybreak Farms. Okay. All right. So
yes.
Yeah, you've said you believed that you were doing the right thing and you were performing your function true to your auditing code of conduct, but you said you will never again become a whistleblower. You'll never do what you've done. After you had said you think you could do it, you phoned the journalists afterwards of the Sunday Times to say, no, you want to change that. Why won't you do it again? Why won't you blow the whistle again? Because corruption is so endemic in this country and we need courageous people like yourselves to speak up. But you said you'll never do it again. Why?
I'm at a position where I stand to lose things that I worked hard for. And the lack of support from the very people you thought that they will support you. Honestly, when we wrote the letter to the PIC, we thought that we were going to get support. We were confident, all of us were confident that we would get support. The lack of support and the intimidation, when we reported, I think it was only under 1 million. 200 million rands later, we are still here without jobs. We are facing a lot of litigations against us. My savings have been completely depleted. And I still stand here. Was it worth it? You know, I need to see people standing before the judge and answering to what they've done. And it hasn't happened yet. So that's why I said I don't think I'll do it again, because the wheels of justice take time to turn. And by the time they turn, you'll be down and out.
And you don't feel protected by the law. There is a law, there is an act of sorts that we have in the country around about disclosures that should be protecting you, but you feel that you are not being protected. You've mentioned the Hawks in one of the instances earlier. What about the National Prosecuting Authority? Have they come into the picture at all? Where do they come into the picture in this matter?
No, there are two cases. There's a case that I opened myself, which is now with the NPA against the board and some individuals that are related to the board. So that one is moving, it's with the NPA. But then you look at the case against me. I don't have a problem with being investigated. But we appeared 4 times before the magistrate. And the charges were finally withdrawn because the NPA couldn't prove their case against us.
Okay, so finally, what are you going to do now? I mean, you've decided to tell your side of the story. You're doing so here, giving us some of the key highlights. What's next now for you, Mathapelo? If you say you'd never again become a whistleblower, you still want to salvage some of what you've worked hard for.
Yes, now that's my goal, to salvage what I worked hard for, to see my kids in the right space, because they still have trauma from the Anton pillar that happened, and seeing their mother in distress. They still have, so
but how are you going to do that when there's this criminal investigation around you? Who's going to employ you?
One of the goals is to clean my name. I do not have a problem with the Hawks investigating, but ultimately I want to clean my name. There's nothing to hide. They can investigate, but I want to clean my name.